What's going on, everybody? Hope y'all enjoy this video. I'd like to thank Officer Hoover for coming in and doing this class. I'd like to thank Dirt Perfect for inviting me up there to this event. This is an awesome learning experience. We was in the classroom, gosh, I think we got in there about 8 o'clock. I think I left there about 2:30 finally. This was a cool deal.
Alright guys, we're going to do this the quick way. So what we'll do is we'll just kind of start off at the front.
You guys can probably stand underneath the overhang for a while.
Yeah, if you guys want to stand under the overhang, I'll bite the wet bullet.
Oh Lord, here we go. Now we're getting the party started.
You opened that on a free trip this morning, did you?
Of course I did. Parked here last night. Yeah. All right.
Parked here last night.
So. Yeah. All right. So obviously we're starting off the front end. Make sure the headlights are working. Both headlights, high beam, low beam. Turn signals, left turn, right turn, 4 ways that are independent. You don't have to work through all that. Top 5 clearance lights, amber and color, working. We work our way down to the windshield, checking for any cracks, breaks, defects like that. Any basically intersecting cracks, it's time to get it replaced. Any chips or breaks in the glass is basically greater than 3/4 of an inch and nickel sized, makes it no good. It's now a violation.
How about one about that long?
Well, is there intersecting cracks to it? Then it's going to be all right for now.
If it's straight,
yeah.
leads to your problems.
So, wipers, make sure wipers work, both sides. Make sure that, ooh, that water went right down that sleeve. That's good. All right, so make sure the wipers, washer systems, make sure they're topped off, have washer fluid, because not having that is a violation. And basically, defective washer system. So making sure that's good. Horn, either city horn, air horn's got to work, one or the other. Preferably don't hit that when we're bent in looking under the hood. You might make the little kick. So yeah, that's.
Wait till he's underneath the truck.
So,
that way
yeah,
you hear the loud bang.
To piss him off, I got all sorts of tips.
Just not to interrupt you real quick, but I think one important thing you miss is whenever you get stopped, is attitude is everything.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, because like I said, we're.
Give him attitude?
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, give them attitude.
You do short yes and no answers.
Yeah. Yes, sir. No.
Until you figure out what you're being accused of. Kind of like with your wife.
Exactly. Yes, dear, no, dear. I will take care of that promptly. Dear. Minus the deer part. So, all right. So we done all that. Obviously, you know, you guys are checking your fluids, doing all that stuff. But what we're really looking for, as far as DOT side, is let's see, fuel rail. Is it on the other side? Okay. So depending on whatever side, some of the other motors are, but basically checking those components out. What I'm really kind of hitting on is not necessarily, I mean, common stuff, lights, all that stuff. Yes, you want to check each and every day, but some of these other areas, you know, really getting down, looking at your brakes, brake chambers, airlines, that's not necessarily something that has to be done each and every time, but at least once a week, really slow down, really go through that, really check that stuff out. So like we're coming in, you know, we're giving the steering components a good check there, you know, going, okay, what kind of it, you know, checking the ends here, checking for any leaks around the power steering pump, make sure the power steering pump's on there good and tight. And it's kind of the redundant, you know, checking all the bolts, checking the spring hanger, make sure no bolts are loose, missing, cracked, or broken, all that good stuff. Getting down, really checking the springs. And if anybody's followed me on Facebook for a while, I'm a big dry powdery rust fan. Dry powdery rust to me helps me do my job, because I can look in, anything that's got some dry powdery rust indicates there's some movement somewhere. Yeah, there's certain components that you will have some movement, will have some powdery rust, but a lot of the time, if there's some dry powdery rust, something's going on. So look into that. We're coming down, we're checking the steering components. So like I was mentioning, dry powdery rust. If you looked in, you saw some dry powdery rust around these components. Those are supposed to be good and tight. They're not supposed to be moving. But if you do see that, see the streaking, that's an indication, hey, something's going on there. Front tire here, we're checking major tread grooves, obviously for any cuts, defects, wear. Minimum tread depth on the front steer is what? 430 seconds? 430 seconds. 2 major tread grooves. This is what we're checking out here. Bare minimum 430 seconds. Of course, when we're looking at the tire, the rim, we're checking for any breaks, cracks, chips, basically anything that's going to cause that rim some issues down the road. Obviously, we're checking out the lug nuts. Make sure, you know, lug nuts are on there, good, tight, none of the studs are broke off, anything like that. If we happen to find 2 lug nuts side by side that are loose, or 3 anywhere, that's enough to place the vehicle out of service, okay? And a real big time is I can tell these wheels haven't been off for a while, so I've probably got a pretty good feeling that, hey, you know, they're probably going to be loose, barring, hitting something or jarring it real bad. But anytime I find out a truck's had a brake job, service job, something where they pop tires off, put tires back on, oh yeah, really get in there, really check those. A lot of times the brake guy, he'll go through, put a whole new set of brakes, and the last thing to do is put the damn wheel on, tighten everything up, torque everything, and then
like my car
right
earlier.
before lunch and doesn't get done. And then 2 days later, you're driving down the road, got a front end wobble, you get out, and your damn wheel's all wallered out, and costing you more money, more headaches. So good thing is it'll stay on, you know, if it stayed on the truck and not shot through the median and gone through a Hyundai or something. So wheel seals, obviously checking these out, making sure, hey, everything's good and tight, no leaks on the outside, make sure the cap's present. This plug here, if that plug's missing or damaged, or that plastic's damaged where we can see in, that's another automatic out of service. So just be checking that out. On the inside of the rim, or of the tire, obviously we're checking the brake chamber, making sure that, hey, brake chamber's there, no large holes in it, nothing like that. Checking the airline, because rubbing, chafing airlines is probably one of the biggest things we find on trucks, and one of the highest road violations is rubbing, chafing airlines. So really check those over, check those out, make sure there's no issues there. And once in a while, have somebody in the truck and have them put the foot on the brake, service brake, and walk around and listen, because a lot of times that's exactly what we're doing. Hey, driver, can you put your foot on the brake? All right, he's got his foot on the brake, and we're listening. Is there any air leaks, anything like that? Once in a while, have a buddy do that. Hey, hop in my truck, put your foot on the brake, and walk around it, because what we're doing...
Hey, do we need to go ahead and check this one while we're...
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Hey,
Dang, he done started calling names.
my trouble is I fixed one air leak that I could hear, and now there's a bunch of small ones.
Push strokes about like that.
Oh, yeah. Air leaks.
Double dipping. Smart DOT bearer goes, hey driver, apply the brakes. Oh, look at that push
It's a good chance it's going to the shop as soon as it leaves here. So.
Yeah, that's everybody's story.
Yeah.
Making a list.
Where
It's
you
on its
going?
way to the shop.
Where are you going to? I'm going to the shop. And whatever you find, sir, I will get fixed. So
Worked out well for me.
yeah, exactly. All right, so when you're looking inside, he's got them pesky dust covers. Those things are the biggest pain in the ass.
That's probably why he leaves them on there.
Fun is when the whole little view window is packed with grease and you wipe it off there and just oozes fresh grease and stuff. Because what would that tell us? Inner wheel seal's bad. Well, for an inspector on a front steer, if inner wheel seal's bad and we got oil on the brake linings, oil on the brake drum, that's an automatic out of service. So anytime you find something like that on the front steer, it's going to be an automatic out of service. But with it dry, reach in there once in a while. Rub your finger in that brake drum, when obviously not when it's hot and you just come down a hill. Again, that book of common sense. When you're doing your pre-trip, walk around, stick your finger in there. It should come out dry, powdery. It's been raining, so maybe a little bit of flash rust, but we don't want severe rusting. We don't want any oil. We don't want stuff like that. Or, and again, me as an inspector, I love it when I reach down in there, look, and you can tell like the brakes hadn't worked in 6 months. You know, that's usually a pretty good find on our so checking all that out. Obviously, when you're in here, be checking the front springs. Be looking for cracks. any displacement. Be looking at the spring mounts and where they ride on the spring. Again, you shouldn't see any powdery rust coming from there, because that would indicate as they're driving down the road, there's some movement going on. So kind of be checking that there. I get asked a lot of times about shocks. Shocks are considered a luxury item. So if the shock's leaking, something like that, basically on our side of it, if it's leaking or if it's totally missing, that's not a violation unless it's about ready to fall off. Like the mounting bolts are gone or loose to the point it's about ready to fall off, fly through the windshield. Then at that point, it's going to be not going to be an issue. All right.
Funny part is he's on camera.
You don't have to talk about Matt the whole time. You can switch to somebody else.
Oh, don't worry. You got more coming. All right, so let's go around to the passenger side. We'll check out the passenger
He's
side.
still upset I beat him on it. That's just where the pump stopped sucking.
Yeah.
Just dying to find something loose.
What's he poking at down there?
Anything to shut me up?
This is the part where I always get quiet.
All right, so like I said, what we're looking for any powdery rust, anything like that. So as I'm doing my look, and I know, but if you're kind of wondering what the hell is he talking about, right up here, obviously this is the, but see how that's been moving around creating that rust? That's what we're looking for. So if you're looking in and you find, hey, streaks of rust like that is coming from, these components that are supposed to be tight, the U-bolts, anything along this housing, really checking those springs for any, cracks, any displacement, anything like that. And these Mack motors, like here's where the fuel comes into them. If at any point these were dripping any fuel off of this, then that would be an automatic out of service for fuel leak. Any dripping fuel leak, we'll place it out. So like I said, we're just kind of coming along, we're checking those. Washer fluid, we're kind of checking and just going through that.
Hey, do you want to put out that Attaboy sticker from 6 years ago?
It's faded, needs to come off.
Still there. No!
I've never got one of those.
Yeah.
I've got one.
They're usually cussing when I leave.
I got one.
I say Alabama, if they pull you in there, they're going to find something. If they don't find nothing, they're going to write you a seatbelt ticket just for the heck of it.
Challenge us. That's always fun. I love the phrase, "Oh, this truck just came out of the shop. You ain't going to find nothing." Oh, stand by. Stand by. So yeah,
Hold my beer, watch this.
I hadn't even looked at it. I'm like, I already got you out of service. What? I said, you don't have any brake lights in the back. So, but anyway, so we'll just, since we're on the passenger side, we'll work our way down the passenger, come around the driver's side. So when we get up here, what are we looking for? We're looking for, it's 2020 now, so we're going to be looking for, if the decals, be looking for those. Both sides of the power unit got to be visible, all that on there. Signage, making sure your signage is highly contrasting, can be seen from a distance. So we got US, DOT, that's the required verbiage. Can't just have DOT, can't just have US, you got to have US DOT. Some instances you will see like IN for Indiana. What that would denote is it's an intrastate based carrier. That's just more for our end than on your all's end. So I had to laugh one morning. Mike posted a video or did something, and there was a nice layer of frost, and it looked like you couldn't see any of that. And I said, "You take your numbers off?" By gosh, 7:30 next morning, my phone was dinging. He said, "Look, date and time. It's on here. It's on here." So making sure that your company name, DOT number, legible up to 50 feet. Kind of the faded gold it's getting, but no, it's still on there. So inside the truck, obviously, truck registration, annual inspection, insurance, all that good stuff in there. The annual inspection, when asked, basically if you can say, yeah, the sticker's here, or here's the manila form to show your current annual, you're going to be good to go there.
Fire extinguisher and triangles as well, correct?
Yep, fire extinguisher triangles. How many triangles you got, Mike?
3.
3? Are they complete? Sure. Erector set, not in pieces?
Them last.
Oh, well.
They're right beside the seat.
Oh, here we go.
Muscle milk. You got some muscle milk in here? Muscle milk. Oh,
That's
it's
quick.
got some critter. What the heck? Is that how you drink your milk, Mike?
Shotgun it.
And this right here, if anybody's wondering, this is the garbage meter. This shows you how much crap they got piled up in the cab. Makes me decide whether or not I want to open the passenger side door or not. 95. The 3 specs of emergency equipment you're required to have: fire extinguisher, emergency triangles, and spare electrical fuses and/or breakers, depending on what your truck requires or needs. That's kind of one of those, I call them the back pocket violations. You know, if I get a driver that, you know, going through some stuff, okay, do you got your spare electrical fuses? I didn't even know. Yeah, that is a requirement. Or the ones that, hey, you have no lights on the back of your truck. Yeah, I blew a fuse 40 miles back. Well, do you have a replacement fuse? No, why the hell would I have that? Because it's required in 393.95, subsection S that I'm writing you up for. So, you know, so that's where a little bit of that kind of comes in. When we're talking about required lighting, you can see this Mac here, it came with a side turn signal amber running light. So basically what this is, Mac put this as an additional item. It's not required by the federal regulations. Federal regs state it's got to have an amber turn signal clear to the front. This is more of a courtesy side light. Same thing with the turn signal mid. I think he's got one. No, looks like this. Most trailers now, the newer ones, they'll have that additional turn signal there. That's more of a courtesy thing, and not necessarily required by us. What we're looking for is a reflective reflector or a light, amber light in the center. So then we're coming back, checking out the exhaust system. Big thing here is just making sure there's no leaks underneath the cab. Be looking at the hose clamps, stuff like that for any black, making sure there's no leaks there. Well, I'm getting a little wet, and DOT bears don't get wet unless we write tickets. So, so as you can see, there's a prime example of an exhaust leak plus a ticket. So, no. But you know, getting down and just looking for that. So, say we're looking, we got a good puffing exhaust leak. First thing I'm going to do, open the door of the cab, inspect the floor of the cab, make sure, hey, there's no area for those exhaust fumes to get up in there. If say I move the floor mat and there's his tobacco spitting hole right down through there, but yet he's spitting on the exhaust and that exhaust fumes come right up, boom, I got an out of service violation. Or you can use your imagination. Over the road drivers, they may cut a hole in the floor because they're too busy to stop and do that. So that usually will end an inspection pretty quickly when you get back here on the drive shaft and there's poo on it. So, so now we're starting into all this. So we'll kind of work our way from the top to the bottom. Amber warning lights here in the state of Indiana. Technically, the only vehicles that require to have amber warning lights are mobile home movers. They've kind of pushed into added, like oversized folks that do the oversized stuff, they'll add the amber lights. And it's kind of one of those understandings that it's kind of to promote vehicle safety, so we're really not worried about going, oh, you got amber lights on, you're not supposed to. But be mindful that if you do got them on, only try to do that when you're loaded, when you're oversized. And then, so the front example here is an example of how not to have your front signage, because here in the state of Indiana it says oversized load, all one sign, and it meets certain specs. So technically, with it being broke up, moved, it's not meeting the exact specs on that.
That's why you have a good attitude.
So exactly.
Y'all don't enforce that unless you get at your back pocket thing. Okay. This long looks professional. And keep
professional. And the big thing is, or if there's some complaints or something.
Gotcha.
And go from there.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And then there's running the oversized stuff when you're not oversized. So I've had people go, well, am I going to get in trouble with my amber lights if I'm running loaded? No, probably more so if you're not loaded running, the amber lights running down the road. Some issues there. So now we're looking at the reflective material on the back side of the tractor. So as we're starting our way down, you can see there's some white. Those reflectors there on the cab. And then if you have any box trailers, you're required to have white on white L's, 12 inch by 12 inch on point at the highest extremities. Those are required on the back. As well as, in what year's this truck, Mike?
99.
99. So anything newer than a 97 is going to require red and white reflective material on the mud flat brackets or somewhere on the rear.
97.
Okay. What month?
Huh?
What month?
This is a trick question. I'm going to go with January.
January still in, because it's July 1st to 97. So
It could be a 96. I think it's one of those late
okay.
December
Well, I
trucks.
tell you what. We'll 1989 Semester. So if this is 1989, it would not need reflective material. But gosh, dang it! I want this for Christmas. I go home. I am right when I'm in this uniform. I go home, and then I'm in trouble. So I'm right. No, I know. All right, fine. 1982. If I got a problem with 1982. If I got color green, you know, green and gold. So, all right, but so the reflective material on the back of the mud flap, or reflective material red and white across the base of the cab. So just something. Those are kind of things, they do get wrote up. So just kind of be mindful of that.
Is that even if you have a trailer on?
Yeah, even if you have a trailer on. Same thing with the lights working on the rear of the tractor. Turn signals, brake lights, four-ways, one backup light, all of that has to work even when hooked to the trailer. It's not an out of service if the brake light's out or something like that's out.
Unless you're bobtail?
Unless you're bobtail.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
If you're bobtail and one of your brake or the turn signals out, then that's going to be out of service. So we're coming down. He's got his fuel tank mounted. Big thing here is we're just checking to make sure there's no fuel leaks, nothing like that. We've got our oil tank here, and we're just checking, hey, is it mounted securely, properly? Is it going to come off, fall off, anything like that? Air tanks up there. We're just making sure that there's no play or movement in those. If one of the bands got loose and there, we could basically move that tank more than an inch, and that would be an out of service violation there. Okay, we're working our way back. Drive shaft. We're getting under there. We're checking the play. Make sure there's no play, no loose bolts. Common sense stuff there. Working our way back, and again, we're just kind of looking. We're checking out all of our air lines, electrical lines, making sure there's nothing rubbing, chafing. So we've got air lines here. We'll be checking because, like I said, anything in here, the way you got it running, it could potentially start rubbing, causing some issues. Yeah, beautiful spaghetti. We got our spring guards on there. Spring guards are really important on these because, especially the red and blue lines, those thermoplastic lines, because those are real prone to kinking, and they are required springs. So if you ever have one go bad and you have to cut it off, make sure you maintain that spring on there. Too many times they'll cut it off, pull that spring on because they need some more of that straight section. They put it all back together. 2 minutes later, it's kinked, and now they're still out of service. So it went from a violation as soon as it kinks to an out of service on that. Kind of looking in, checking out the brake chambers, the airlines, make sure the airlines are routed proper. They're not rubbing the frame, anything common sense like that. And then, of course, if we was going to be checking brakes, we'd get somewhere level, get it chalked, have driver release all the brakes. I'd climb underneath, make my chalk mark, then have driver press and hold down, and then we're just basically measuring that push stroke.
Which is how much?
2 inches at normal plant 30. Long stroke plant 30 is 2.5. And that's the most you can have. C20s and C24s, if they're short strokes, it's 1.5 inches. If they're long strokes, it's 1 3/4 inches. And a lot of that you can tell by looking at the brake chamber, especially on these ones that are partnered with the parking brake. If they got the square ports or it's got a real long section in between, that's usually a long stroke. Or if it's got the trapezoidal tag, either embossed or stamped in the middle, or a tag on the brake chamber. So, on that. We're working our way back now. And when we go checking fifth wheel movement, fifth wheel play, the big thing is we're really checking the mounting hardware. Make sure the bolts are good, tight, secure, all that. When it comes to the fifth wheel, we're manipulating enough that if we see some slop, we can go further and check that further. But we've got to be really confident in the driver we got, and that they're going to understand our simple instructions on how to set the trailer brake, back into it, do this and do that. So we don't check that too often unless we really suspect that there's an issue. When we get to the front of the trailer, we're also going to be checking for lighting. When it comes to the front of the trailer, amber lights or Some trailers are designed, they'll have a 45 here and one of these lights on the 45. That's fine because it can be seen from the front and the side. You don't necessarily need two, but in this case, the hard 90 forces you to have two. So those would need to be working. Reflective material down the side of the trailer. Basically, you can have it broke up into sections like this. This is just fine as long, basically, on that. If we was to get meticulous and sit here with tape measure all the sections, measure the total length, divide it by 2, and if we got more reflective material than half of the trailer, it's good. But kind of the rule on there is, when in doubt, throw it on there. It's never going to hurt anything. Tires, wheels, doing the same thing there. U-bolts, that kind of system there, really looking at the U-bolts, really shining the flashlight in, checking out the springs, make sure there's no cracks, or really what will happen is when the crack forms and a set of springs, that's where you get a lot of that dry powdery rust. And I don't know a lot about these older.
They're bulletproof, no issues.
Bulletproof, no issues. So that's not shifting and all that, and that bushing going bad.
That's not wore out going to the shop next week to get replaced at all.
Oh, okay. Well, as long as the parts are on the shelf.
It does look kind of wore out, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And the parts are on the shelf, Mr. Finley, with no brakes on his trailer.
Oh.
I got
Wait
one
a minute.
S-cam.
I see a pretty good bit of slack
One
in
locked
there.
up S-cam. Come on.
I think I'm gonna do it. Yeah.
He's going in.
Oh, do we need to go ahead and let you hit the brakes too? Show the brake lights off?
No, I need to learn to shut up.
I need to bring my gold shovel and scrape all that dirt off that track.
Yeah.
It's so damn good with an excavator, just give it back.
Damn, somebody is a sore loser.
No joke.
You got to see that basketball whipping wildly on the end of that stick.
He just mad because he got 4th place.
So with a flashlight, like I said, getting yourself a good flashlight, you can do a lot. So just by, real simple, I'm just kind of following this airline down to the brake chamber. An area that I would look at if I was really getting into this is see how that airline's kind of resting on that frame.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That would be an area that I could pull up and probably find some rubbing or chafing.
I can tell it's rubbed in there now.
Oh yeah, it's probably out of service. I should just put it out right now.
1285 Aspen Road, Kelsey.
Same thing on the other side. And anywhere you got, these coming in, you just kind of want to check it. You got these dog bones here. Really just kind of shine your light in, checking the bolts. A lot of people ask me, do you prefer a truck clean or do you mind dirty? Honestly, I don't mind dirty because if the bolt heads are all dirty, like all along there, that tells me everything's good and tight. Now, if they were cleaned out, starting to waller out and spin, that's probably a good indication, hey, we got an issue. Coming in, checking the ends of these brake chambers, making sure there's no rusted out holes or anything like that, because any rusted out holes on the parking brake side is an automatic out of service. So just checking to make sure that's good. And like I said, the truck's set for a little bit, so you can all kind of see the way that brake drum looks. That's going to be typical of it sitting a little bit. But if he come rolling up and it kind of looked like that, I'd probably be wanting to kind of look at that brake adjustment just a little bit closer on that. But a real quick way to do that, or eyeball it, is if he's got his parking brake set and there's no gap in the linings, probably means a good brake adjustment. Plus, with the parking brake set, you kind of eyeball that, and it's going to be pretty dang close to what the actual push travel is of the service brake. So if you look in there and you can see the shiny part and it's about 1.5 inches, probably pretty good 1.5 inches. If you're looking at them and they're really shooting out, ooh, it's probably 2 inches or more. Probably pretty good indication they're going to be out of adjustment. So lights on the back. Like I was saying, turn signals, left and right, brake lights, both sides. At least one backup light is required. I know it's petty, but that's all still required whenever it's hooked to a trailer. Now, if he's bobtail and one of his turn signals was out, it would be an out of service, unless up on the mirrors or the fenders, the way they stick out, if he had one that you could visually see straight back and you could see it, that would save from that issue there. So lot of inspectors will take loose dunnage and take it to the extreme and place stuff like that out of service for loose dunnage. But again, a lot of it is,
that a little mud up there?
he's able to get this stuff down. These are in here of adequate, depth and at angle. They're not going to pop out. And he was nice enough to put out this demonstration chain for me. Excellent guy. So what we're looking at here is we got bent links, twisted links. So basically, if we discover any of these links like this in the load-bearing portion being used to secure, makes the chain no good. All right, but say, well, I can't use that section. Say this section was being used, and we looked at this, and we don't have any bent links, anything like that. That portion could be used, and this portion not used. And again, what's nice is once in a while, and I saw one earlier, I don't know where it went, but like if you get chains that are constantly being used the same, oh, there we go. See that big,
Ooh.
See? So what I was talking about was you get your chain gauge, so it's a 3/8. So I'm going to come around here and see how I can get that onto that link. So even if that link was being used, that's greater than 20% wear. So like I said, these are about 20 bucks. And what's nice, you can gauge them, you can do that. Plus, they got this nice straight edge, and that can kind of help you when you're looking at these links. You can come through with this straight edge. Obviously, we don't, but that's just giving you an idea. You can see how much that's bent. Same thing with the binders. We come through and we do the same, thing. See, so like, that one's got a bent link. But something to consider is, like I said, if he's got his bare minimum requirements, and say he had some tuba 10s that were 20 foot long sitting down the middle, and he used that to secure those tuba 10s, are we really going to place that out of service? No. But if this was being used on the heavier equipment, could we probably, yeah. So that's kind of what we're really looking for there. So when it comes to load securement, like I said, we got a tracked vehicle. We got the bucket. So first thing we're going to do is come back in here and we're going to check. Does he got two on the front side of this? Yes, he does. So we're going to come in and go up. So if we stopped him, his little whirly gig thing was loose. So we're going to come in, and now that this was loose, he's going to be in violation. He's got a loose, and then we're also, when we go to factor in the working load limit, basically I'm going to take this one out of play. So act like it wasn't even there. So making sure that those stay good and tight. When we're coming down here to the stake pockets, I guess you get asked a lot about this. Big thing is we're really checking the integrity of the stake pocket. If there was any major cracks, like to the point that it was starting to come up, or this has been out a little bit, but we're looking for any major cracks or breaks that would basically make that ineffective. And then depending on, had this come up, say you're using straps, can you secure to this rub rail? Yes, you can. Here in the U.S., can you secure on the outside of the rub rail? Yes, you can. Back in like 06 or 07, they said no, you couldn't, but they did away with that. So it is still permissible to be on the outside of that.
Yes, question.
Yes, go right ahead.
My low boy has the C-frame or the channel stuck out. Is it legal just to hook that binder into the edge of that C-frame?
Yes. If the C-frame, we'll just imagine this is a C-frame. If we're looking, if there's basically no room for that hook to slide, if you've got it in a good spot, it's not going to slide and basically make that loose, or the C-frame on there is not cracked or bent, indicating it's starting to fail.
Because there ain't nothing there to keep it from sliding, but we wedge them in there, drive them in a little bit where they won't.
Yeah, and that would just be if an inspector's going, hey, is that, we wedged it or did this or this, explain that to them. So we're coming back, we're looking, and this is just the nature of the beast. There's going to be this stuff, but technically that stuff, if this was coming off, could be considered a loose tonnage. Leaking off, big rocks, stuff like that on the deck. You got to weigh that and understand that that could be an issue. So we're coming back. Again, we're kind of working around, make sure the other four corners are good and tight. We're checking the hooks. like I said, taking the chain gauge, and we're just checking to kind of gauge the chain. And then you can look at the chain itself, and every so many lengths, and this is real easy with a big new chain, is kind of go through there and look, and it'll say G7 or G4 or whatever. That's the grade that you're looking at. So again, we're looking at this, and what I like to do, and what I got on my little spreadsheet, if you're interested in it, is I can go online, look up a John Deere 120. It's going to tell me the operating weight, and that's what I go off of. And then when you go off of that, and that's what I make my calculations off
With or
of.
without the
So, yeah.
And hydraulic thumb and
So coming up, and we're checking this, and again we get 50%. So looking at the chain's probably 6,600. We know the binder's a lot heavier, so we're going to go 6,600. Divide that 3,300 of working load limit right here, and then we're coming looking at this. Depending, he's got the big heavy binder, smaller chain. We're going to take the working load limit of the chain when we're determining the weight there. Again, we're looking at tires, lugs, making sure there's no illegal welding or modifications to the rim, around the valve stem, anything like that.
You watch too much YouTube.
I do. We're checking this out here. You know, is that just a cap that's leaking, or is there any other issues, something like that?
Is that legal? What's there?
What's that?
Is that oil stain legal? What's inside the rim like that? Or
It's
Yeah.
questionable.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
Tire looks low.
Well, I think trailer's overweight. So,
Trailer's overweight.
I know there's something. You guys didn't hear that. All right, so we're looking at tires, doing the same thing. Lugs, wheel seals, tires, tread depth. Not of steer, so minimum 230 seconds is the magic number for the tread depth on that.
You don't ever thump them?
Yes, and I had a driver one time tell me, what was it? He basically was like, I was just slapping him like this.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, hey, you can't tell shit. And I said, do. Like, got a flat tire, you know, so. Which I already knew it was blue because it was, when we seen him from the tower, we saw a big flap of rubber, so I was like, hey, he's got a flat tire. But he's like, you can't tell shit just tapping it like that. I said, so, he got spanked. Yes, yeah.
yeah, that's why I kind of.
And like something right there, yeah.
Okay.
There's something to prevent that from moving.
How far? How far apart do they need to be?
What's that?
How far apart do they need to be? Like, see where we boom all kinds of stuff all the way down, and I've got the channel all the way down through here. There's nothing to keep I'm just booming right here. Or I'm saying I'm booming right here. There's nothing to keep it from.
You'd have to add
And
that.
that's just something you'd have to be careful of, making sure that it's not when it's under
What
that
is your
tension.
key stock on there or
It's not. Because what you don't want to happen is you go down the road and it bumps and maybe loosens that chain, and it could do one or two things: slide or come
Loose. Okay.
Like I had a big heavy crane. He had a big massive chain and binder and all that, and went up to it, and it was just a swing. Because what had happened was he had hit something, it lost
Forward.
and just
Lost tension
slipped
for a
off.
second.
Which he had enough.
On some on tires, rubber tires.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
like I said, we'll just get back here. Don't mind you. Is it cracked or broke? Which is fine because you don't have anything secure.
Oh,
That's a Captain Cleaming. That's a Captain Cleaming hooking point for pulling himself out of shit.
Oh, nice.
cool.
I've heard of those stories. All right, so like I said, we're looking down the side of the trailer. This trailer's layout's just a little bit different, but you can see amber center, red on the rear. That's you'll see some of these trailers, they'll have 42 lights down the side of them because, man, they hit every chrome shop between here and Vegas. And I love it because 9 times out of 10 you'll go through and go, okay, all I need is one red here, and I need amber in the center, and that one in the center's burned out. But I got 42. Yeah, but it's required here. I'm really not that mean. I laugh at him and